beginning to measure. The Great Conjunction of 2020 did not cause the pandemic, it coincided with the collective response to it, because the collective mind and the planetary rhythms share a source. The synchronicity is the phenomenon, the astrology is the language, and the language, unlike the market, has been spoken for 5,000 years.
And I will answer with the mathematics. Quantum mechanics has taught us that the universe is not a clockwork of local causes. It is a web of correlations, some of them instantaneous, some of them cosmic. The astrology of the future will be tested, as all science is tested, by prediction and replication. And I will make the wager tonight. Within 50 years, the correlations between the great conjunctions and the collective events of the century will be demonstrated with statistical rigor that the skeptics of 2026 cannot imagine. Not because astrology is magic, but because resonance is real.
Then I am outvoted, and gladly. But the ledger demands the final accounting. Let us count what we have offered tonight. The bones of Babylon and Egypt and India, the psyche of the modern school, the mathematics of the quantum, the decades, the conjunctions, the eclipses, the ingresses, the harmonics, the parts, the fixed stars, the rectification, the synastry of nations, the climate, the calendar, and the ethics. That is not a podcast, that is a library. And it is yours, listeners, to test against the century.
And the library's oldest volume is the one we should close with. The Enuma Anu Enlil, 70 Tablets of Omens, begins with the sky and ends with the kingdom. It was written to be used, not admired. So use this night's work. Mark the years we have given you, watch the skies we have named, and when the eclipses and the conjunctions arrive, remember that you were told. Not to be impressed, but to be prepared. The prepared mind is the only mind the century cannot break.
And I will add the modern footnote. Preparation is not prediction, it is the union of prediction and freedom. The forecast gives the weather. The soul gives the navigation. The century of stars is also the century of choices, and every choice is a chart being cast. Cast yours well.
And the quantum footnote. The wave function of the century is not yet collapsed. It is a superposition of every future we have named tonight, and it will be collapsed, decade, by the actions of the living. That is the deepest meaning of QRMA. The sky writes the question, and humanity writes the answer. Thank you for listening to the Century of Stars. May your measurements be honest, your resonances be strong, and your future be bright.
This has been the Century of Stars, with Ava Chen, Maya Osei, Leo Marin, and myself, Tariq Shah. Join us again in the sky. Until then, keep the ledgers, keep the lineages, keep the questions. The century is long, and the stars are patient. Welcome to part 3 of the Century of Stars, the working session of the Council. We have mapped the century and defended the method. Now we do the thing most podcasts never do. We cast charts in public, we read them line by line, and we let you watch the delineation happen. Maya, you have the world chart. Open it.
The world chart, in the tradition I was taught, is cast for the first moment of the year 2001, the first second of the new millennium, in the tropical zodiac. Its sun stands in early Capricorn, its moon in late Aries, its ascendant in the water signs, and its Saturn and Uranus in early Taurus, opposite the nodes. This is the chart of the century we are living through, and every great transit of the next 74 years lands somewhere in it.
And the first thing the modern school does with the world chart is count the hard aspects to its angles. The Pluto transit to the world chart's ascendant falls in the 2040s, and that is the decade of the world's identity crisis. The collective asks who it is, and the answer is written in fire. The Uranus opposition to the world chart's sun falls in the 2060s, the decade of the great disruption of the center. And the Saturn conjunction with the world chart's moon falls in the late 2020s, which is the emotional recalibration of the collective, the great grief and the great resolve.
And here is where I insist the world chart be read as a boundary condition, not a prophecy. The world chart of 2001 is the initial wave function of the century. Every transit is a measurement of that wave function. And because the century is young, the wave function is still broad, still rich with possibility. The chart does not say what the 2040s will be. It says which questions the 2040s will be forced to answer. The questions are fixed. The answers are ours.
Now the national charts, and I will read the one the listeners know best, the United States. The Sibley chart, the most widely used, places the Sun at 13 degrees of Cancer, the Moon at Aquarius, and the Ascendant at Sagittarius. Its Saturn sits in Libra, its Pluto in Capricorn, and its Uranus in Gemini. Every Saturn return of the Republic, every eclipse across its land, every great conjunction aspecting its angles is a chapter of its story. And we have dated the chapters, 2041, 2071, and 2100.
Let me delineate the American mid-century with the full protocol. The 2041 Saturn return coincides with the Great Conjunction of 2040 and the total eclipse of 2045 crossing the continent. 3 techniques, 1 window. The constitutional order of the Republic is renegotiated in the 2040s. Not necessarily broken, but renegotiated. The relationship between the states and the center, the meaning of the founding documents, the contract between the generations. The American Saturn return is the moment the Republic asks itself what it is for. The answer will be written between 2041 and 2045.
And the quantum reading of the American question. The Republic is a superposition of 2 American ideas, the idea of the frontier and the idea of the covenant. Every Saturn return is a decoherence event that selects one branch. In 1861, the covenant branch lost to the frontier branch, and the Republic split. In 2041, the same superposition returns, and the selection will depend on the measurements taken in the 2030s, the elections, the courts, the media, the stories. The astrology does not choose. The actors choose. The sky only schedules the examination.
And the Vedic reading of the same chart adds the dasha. The United States, cast for the 4th of July 1776, entered a long Venus dasha in the 20th century, and the Venus dasha of a nation is the era of its soft power, its culture, its money. The dasha transitions in the 2040s into a sun dasha, and the sun dasha of a nation is the era of its identity, its leadership, its pride and its shadow. The American century of soft power ends in the 2040s, and the American century of identity begins. That is the dasha reading, and it matches the Saturn return. 2 traditions, 1 door.
Now China, and I will read it with the same care. The People's Republic was proclaimed on the 1st of October 1949, and its chart has the Sun in Libra, the Moon in early Scorpio, and a powerful Saturn in Virgo. The Pluto return of the Chinese Republic falls in the 2040s, the first in its history, and a Pluto return is the reckoning of a polity with its own founding fire. The original revolution, the original violence, the original dream, all returning to be faced. The 2040s are the decade of China's Pluto return, and the 2040s are also the decade of the Great Settlement. The two are not unrelated.
And the American-Chinese synastry, which Ava raised in Part 2, deserves the full delineation. The 2 charts share a long-standing Saturn-Pluto square, the aspect of structural rivalry, and the aspect is activated by the transits of the 2040s and the 2060s. But the synastry also carries a developing Jupiter trine, the aspect of commercial interdependence, and the balance between the rivalry and the interdependence is the question of the century. The 2040s are the settlement decade for both powers, and the settlement will be written in the language of both aspects, competition and commerce, rivalry and need.
And the quantum language of the American-Chinese entanglement. The 2 powers are entangled at the level of the world system, and the entanglement is not local. A measurement on one side, a crisis in Washington or a policy in Beijing, collapses the state of the other. This is why the forecast of the rivalry is itself a force in the rivalry, and why the astrologer's reading must be published with care. The observers of the system are inside the system.
Now Europe, the collective chart of the continent, and the most complex reading in the cabinet because Europe is many charts. The European Union, born at the Treaty of Rome in 1957, has its Saturn returns in 1986, 2016, and 2046. The 2046 return falls in the decade of the Great Settlement, and the European question in the 2040s is the question of form. Is the Union a federation, a confederation, or a network? The Saturn return forces the answer. And the 2046 return coincides with the 2045 American eclipse and the 2043 Pluto ingress into Pisces. Europe in the 2040s.